Our airport communities are why we are talking to you today about the problems of our airport community residents. You know, on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we are here to demand economic and social justice for the people who are living in our airport communities, which in our view is about a 10-mile circumference from Sea-Tac International Airport. And our 33rd District in particular is burdened by airport operations. We have the highest number of children living in poverty in our 33rd District, and the whole area is a majority-minority community with a large population of African Americans, Asians, Hispanic folks, and people and immigrants from all over the world. It's incredibly diverse, but it is also incredibly burdened. Our median family income in our neck of the woods is around $93,000. That compares to a statewide average of $110,000 a year. You know, before he was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. called for economic justice. On the day he was assassinated, he was working with the sanitation workers who were on strike. So today, we are echoing his call for the residents of our airport communities who are burdened with 24/7 air and noise pollution. The Seattle's King County Public Health Department in 2020 did a report to the legislature about the health status in our airport communities. And it found that the residents of our airport communities have a higher rate of death from heart disease, from respiratory disease, a higher rate of asthma, and in fact have a lower life expectancy. The closer you live to the airport, the more you are burdened with a lower life expectancy, up to 5 years lower than the rest of the people of King County if you live within 1 mile of the airport. These are facts, and that's why we are now insisting that the Port of Seattle address these health and economic and social injustices, not only with words, but with actual revenue. Its first obligation is to repair the failed port packages, and we provided some photos of Mr. Lee's failed port package in Sea-Tac. We are also calling for funding from the Climate Commitment Act funds to mitigate air pollution that is from jets specifically. They're known as ultra-fine particulates. They are so small. They can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they can get into a placenta in the womb. That is why tomorrow we will be testifying in favor of Senate Bill 5955 and House Bill 2103. You know, other ports around the country have stepped up and taken responsibility for the damages its operations have caused to their surrounding populations. It's time for the Port of Seattle to do so, too. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my seatmate, Representative Tina Orwall.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for being here today. Today, I stand to address a concern that touches the heart of my community, the impact of Sea-Tac Airport on our lives. The noise cuts through the quiet of our nights, the relentless flights over 1,000 per day, and the pollution that includes these ultrafine particles that penetrate our lungs. These are not just inconveniences. They are challenges to our health and well-being. The bills are a call to action inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because he said that an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. We seek justice and healing for our community. I want to give you a little bit of background of the work we've done and how we got to the bill that's in front of you. We call it the trifecta for change, and it's government at all levels, the federal, the state, the county, the cities. It's our university, the University of Washington, and most of all, our community leaders that have been making their voices heard for many, many years. Back in 2017, I was approached by Stuart, who's here today. We have a very high rate of asthma in our area. In fact, if you look at the map of the concentrations of ultrafine particles and the maps of children that go to emergency departments, they line up. Very much so. And so we had a move-up study funded through the University of Washington. They had looked at the impact at LAX and Atlanta, the footprint, and they did that work in Sea-Tac. And what they found is that there's a high concentration of ultrafine particles, and you can distinguish them from other types of pollution. Then the next year was the healthcare impact study that was done by the Department of Health, and that was referenced by Keiser. And then in 2020, we did a bill together to allow the fixing of failed packages. In 2021, we looked at our schools, and the University of Washington went and looked at pollution outdoor and indoor in our classrooms. And what they found is that 50% or more of those ultrafine particles make their way indoors. And they're not mitigated by HVAC systems, but when you put in air purifiers, it can reduce that by 70%. And so that was very effective intervention. And then this last session, we did the asthma impact. Again, we have very high rates of asthma. And so the University of Washington is working with the King County Department of Health, reaching out to South King County families that have children with asthma. They'll be looking at the indoor air quality, the use of HEPA filters, and how that impacts the health of the child. We also had more monitoring. We had no monitoring of pollution, and we now have an EPA grant through Puget Sound Clean Air, and we also are including money so that they look at ultrafine particles. So the bills in front of you will do three things. They will expand HEPA purifiers. We'd like to see those in all schools, daycares, senior centers. We also would like to see more indoor spaces for recreation. The second thing, it'll protect our green spaces. Trees and parks are really important to our area. We need to protect those, especially old-growth trees. The third is to help our residents in the community, starting with people with failed port packages, and you'll hear about that today. Senator Kaiser and I met with Mr. Lee, and he's been waiting 8 years for his package to be fixed. He cannot see through the windows of his house. They're infested with mold. And he's there caring for his wife. So how will we pay for these things? The mitigation, and of course we want the mitigation to expand beyond where it's currently provided. One is we think the healthcare climate change dollars under air quality and health disparities is a source, especially around the air quality and the HEPA purifiers. So we are trying to advocate that those could be a source to expand. We also are looking at a portion of the property taxes that the port brings in as one of their revenues. And we're looking at this because they're not allowed to use federal dollars to fix these port packages. So having another source of funding is really important. We know other areas, like Senator Keiser mentioned, have used other sources, their own dollars for this work. So we want to invite the port to be part of this trifecta and a partner as we seek these solutions really to heal our communities. Next up, we have an amazing advocate who's doing great work in Beacon Hill and throughout the South King County area. I'd like to introduce Maria Battagliola.
Thank you, Representative Orwall, and thank you, Senator Karen Keiser, for both of you introducing this bill. You might be wondering, what's a person from Beacon Hill doing on an air and noise issue that comes from Sea-Tac? Well, surprise, surprise, those air pathways go all the way up to 10 miles north over Beacon Hill. And we not only suffer the flights that are taking off, but 70% of the flights coming in. And you have to understand, pre-COVID, there's 450,000 air operations, flights leaving and flights landing in Sea-Tac. And they're now on track to propose expansion of services to add another 100,000 flights. So why are we so concerned about this? When I think of Dr. Martin Luther King, I think of the fact that he talks about justice for everyone. And there is an invisible injustice called noise pollution. In 2017 and 2018, El Centro de la Raza Beacon Hill Council partnered with the EPA Collaborative Problem Solving Grant. And in that, the first year, we educated our folks on the health impacts. Back then, we were focused on respiratory, and we understood that sleep disruption, which leads to mental health, and we also learned about the the cardiovascular impact because of the noise. On top of that, the ultrafine particle has a direct impact onto premature births. And this is not only sad for our families because they have to use their resources to take care of their families, but in Beacon Hill, 70% of our population are people of color and 40% are immigrants and refugees. So this is a potential game changer. When we have been engaging with the port, and they say that they're concerned with environment. They call themselves a green entity. If you go on their website, it's all green. And they talk about community relationship. This is a pathway to help them make some of those values come about. We don't have the time to wait because our lives and our health is impacted. In the zip code 98108, there was a study done by our Duwamish neighbors, and it shows that folks who live on 98108 from the Duwamish, and most of it is across Beacon Hill, people live 8 years less than others on the average. So we started because the definition of airport impacted communities, people just think it's around. But it's bigger. It's also those underflight paths, and we're not eligible for any mitigation at all. We know that it's over 250,000 people that are impacted. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Steve Edmonston, who's with the Quiet Skies Puget Sound, so he can talk about the communities around the airport. My apologies.
There we go. I think we're going to have the mayor speak next.
Rewind, edit. I would like to introduce to you the mayor of Sea-Tac, who is a local advocate for our issues.
Thank you. Well, actually, you were right to introduce him because I learned everything from him. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Senator Keiser and Representative Orwall, inviting me and this effort that you are doing in state level. My name is Mohammed Igal. I'm the mayor of City of Sea-Tac. We are extremely diverse community with more than 90 languages being spoken in the city of Sea-Tac. We are also a city of, as they say, with many immigrants and refugees. You should know that the Sea-Tac Airport comprises 40% of our city, and is one of the top 10 busiest airports in the nation, with more than 50 million passengers going through every day in the Sea-Tac International Airport. While the airport is the largest employer in our community, it also has massive negative impact on our residents and surrounding communities, not only Sea-Tac, but Des Moines, Northern Debarque, Berrien, and all of those areas. I have knocked over 1,000 doors while I was campaigning in 2021. And I have heard residents that this is a very important issue. Having ferried board package means residents are being exposed to noise and pollution from constant aircraft. Actually, I live flat path. Sometimes even I can read the name tag of the pilot. That's how close is it to our homes. Residents have been reporting failed packages, which include failed window seals, foggy windows, and suffering all of those noise. So these residents need help, and they need now. They cannot wait another year. They cannot wait another month. They cannot wait 8 or 7 years. Again, and thank you very much, Senator Keiser and Representative Tino Orwall. And please support this legislation so we can find solution for our residents. And thank you very much for having me today. And now I'm welcoming Steve Edmonston. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Steve Edmonston. I'm really here as a citizen. I live in the city of Des Moines. I've actually lived in that city for 58 of my 62 years, either directly below or just adjacent to flight paths from Sea-Tac Airport. So I can certainly attest and plan to attest tomorrow to the impact of 400,000 flights, operations out of Sea-Tac over our communities and what that means. And I can't say how grateful I am to Senator Keiser and Representative Orwall and the other senators and the other representatives that have sponsored this legislation. It's important. As a citizen, I've been involved with Quiet Skies Puget Sound, which is a great activism group. I've been on state advisory committees. I was on the Des Moines Aviation Advisory Committee. I've been on I was appointed by Governor Inslee to the Civil Aviation Coordinating Commission that was intended to find a new airport. And my learning from all of those activities over the last 6-7 years has been this is a big lift, but it's an even bigger problem. And what we didn't know 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when we used to think that the issue of airport noise and pollution was just something you had decided to move next to the airport, what were you thinking? What we know now from the science, what we know now, starting with the World Health Organization in 2017, and more recently with our scientists in this state studying our airport, what we know now is that noise hurts humans. Noise at a level of an airplane hurts humans. We know that ultrafine particles from airplanes hurt humans. We know now that the products and services that come out of Sea-Tac Airport, it's like a Consumer Product Safety Commission issue. We have products and services that are hurting people. And in any other industry, we'd probably stop until we fix it, but we do love aviation, and rightly so. So we're not going to stop until we fix it, but that doesn't mean we don't start fixing it right now. So we are burdened in our communities, heavily burdened, and we are not having the problem of that burden be fixed. And so I think what these bills represent now are fundamental fairness. I know we use that phrase a lot, but it really applies here. Fundamental fairness. And let me start about how fundamentally fair this is to the Port of Seattle. So before we get in an adversarial relationship and we wag a finger at the port, these bills have carefully thought about how to be fair to the port. And it's exciting how the bills are constructed to be fair to the port. So let me give you a number. One number is $1 billion. With a B, Baker, billion, $1 billion. Port of Seattle's revenues in 2024 are budgeted to be $1 billion. That's the money coming in. These bills in year one will provide $800,000. That's year one. That's, I got to get this right, one thousandth of the Port of Seattle's revenue. 1/1000th of the port's revenue in 2024. I think it's fundamentally fair that that tiny amount be returned to mitigate in those cities. In terms of the levy, what we're talking about, the levy that King County taxpayers pay, we're asking for 1%. Of that, currently, I think it's $83 million levy, 1%. So we're going to get just north of $800,000 on this. But understand how the rest of that levy is used. The rest of the levy is used to further burden. We get 87% of that levy goes to bond debt or capital expenses. So the port's already sweeping 87% of that away from the communities. All that's left is 13%, and we're getting 1%. So there's plenty of money, and it's fundamentally fair both to the Port of Seattle and starts a little bit of fundamental fairness for the communities. And I want to say that these bills are so exciting because they are not more studies. They are not another commission, They are not more consulting and scoping. They are action right now. The bills are super cool. They require that tiny fraction is all in year 1. And yes, that will grow until year 10. But think of the time that the port, a billion-dollar organization, will have to plan to slightly increase what they do for mitigation. And make no mistake, when we use the word mitigation means human health. So if we are not mitigating, we are not only have we hurt human health, we haven't done anything to protect human health. It's about humanity. It's about humans. We should be on the same side. I appreciate that you asked the port to join. Boggles my mind that the port didn't want to join and speak in favor of these bills. I can't understand it. I mean, it's really hard at an emotional level that they're not here in favor of these bills. They're also super cool, by the way, because not only do we get a tiny fraction of that money, but if that levy goes up, we're going to get half of the increase at the margin, which is still a tiny amount, but it kind of allows the port to reflect values in how it chooses to spend money. And we hope that it joins us in reflecting new values to spend on mitigation, which means protecting us that live in that flight path. And these bills do an incredibly new thing. They solve a problem the port has never been able to solve. Never. And that is how to spend money on us. Because for decades, they have always said we cannot, because we are restricted by the federal government, and we can only spend money in the tiny little circle around Sea-Tac Airport. I contend that's never been true, but let's set that aside. What we now know to be true is that they can, and that this levy is untethered. It is money from us that needs to be for us. And I just want to say thank you for listening. I probably, any time I was allotted, probably got exceeded. It's important, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I want to also call out, we have so many people here joining us today. We have City Councilman from Des Moines, we have the Mayor of Sea-Tac, and we have former Representative Velma Valoria's sister, Karen Valoria,
Flight path.
who lives under the flight path and has a failed port package herself. So we have an incredible array of members of the Des Moines City Council, Sea-Tac, and beyond. Thank you, Ken. And I can't thank them enough for their help and support with this effort. So I guess at this point, we can open it to questions if you have questions.
Are there other airports around the country, similar sort of studies or things that have gone on that you guys have learned stuff from?
Well, you know, we do have a relationship in our state with Boston, and they have done work not only around mitigation, but they've been doing the ultrafine particles and the HEPA filters in schools, and they are looking at the mitigation of dollars. And we know San Francisco has found dollars to start mitigating failed port packages.
Is the mitigation efforts, is it a one-time thing? Does it go into the future at a set date, or is it something that will be forever?
Our bill is structured to last for the next 10 years. Then we can reconsider what needs to be done further. But beyond the port packages and beyond the HEPA filters in our schools and daycares and other facilities, we want to look further and think about building greenhouses for people who can grow their own vegetables outside of the contamination that they now have in the soils. We want to look at indoor recreation so people can exercise safely, not running out in the air where they're going to be breathing ultrafine particles into their bodies. So we have a long-range vision as well as the short term.
One other question. Are there other more specific things you can talk about? You talked about the air filtration. Is there like window treatment, I think, specific things for noise and air pollution that the money would go towards?
Well, one example in the failed port packages is the sound packages have triple pane windows. These are like impossible to clean, and that's how they end up infested with mold. And so you have the windows, sometimes it's door and door frames, it could be insulation. We're thinking this package needs to be about noise and air quality, and more of these homes should have HEPA filters. Long range is we also can't open our windows in the summer, and it's getting hotter. And I do think we need to look at those things like air conditioning and other ways to help folks. But again, these packages, many of them failed pretty early on. So people have had these failed windows and other things for many, many years.
Nobody else is asking questions. I'll
Yeah.
ask one more. How would the program, do people apply for it? Is it, a letter sent out? Does it go to everybody? How do people get the benefits of the mitigation?
Right. It's our understanding that over 11,000 people got some kind of port package or should get a port package. We've been trying for many years to get a list of those that have failed port packages, and we do not have that list. But this program creates an account in the Department of Commerce, the equity account, and it does a couple things. One, it has a housing inspector that would be hired by King County. We'd like these homes inspected before they get new packages. There could be mold and other issues that need to be addressed. And there will be an application process where people can apply. Again, we want to prioritize those families that have failed port packages, but we want to expand that to other areas. And so there would be an application process. Again, their home would be evaluated by a home inspector, and then they would be eligible for that port package.
It looks like there aren't any other questions, but we thank you for participating and joining us. The hearing tomorrow morning is at 8 a.m. in the Senate, and in the House it is at...
The House is 10:30.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
you.